We're going to talk about IoT, Internet of Things. IoT is a new gold rush. There will be 50 billion connected objects in 2020, say Cisco or Ericsson. For me, I'm sorry to say, I cannot figure it out. I've always had a problem with gigantic figures. Another figure which is more meaningful to me is that in 3 years' time, by 2017, IoT devices will overpass the number of PCs, tablets, and smartphones combined. Okay, now I can say it. It's going to be huge. A favorable ecosystem thrives in France with the French tech IoT players. Our champions are named Parrot, Withings, and names like Netexplo, Colibri, Bodycap, Citizen Science, Sensei, Alima, Smokyo, Bluebee will soon be familiar to your ears. Is France turning into the startup nation for IoT? All the assets are here to leverage. In the gold rush, there are gold diggers and tool providers like metal detectors, picks, or filtering sieves. Orange has designed a bespoke IoT tool. I'm proud of it because it gives an end to startups to help them going global. What is it? Leveraging its international footprint, Orange connects startup to a sales enabler, opening up its online distribution channels, providing support for localization to sell the product, and connection modules to embed in your connected objects. Please visit iot.orangepartner.com and apply for this enabler for scale. Shodan is a different kind of enabler. It's the first public IoT search engine. By unfolding IoT location and access data, it unleashes possibilities for myriad of applications accessing the asset from the different connected objects. One could display key meetings of your day on your scale or connected fridge. Imagine an app which could control, cross the data, and monitor all the connected objects that you have. Connected object would then be interconnected object. And more than ever, would mobile device be your remote control for life? And this, as Orange, I like it. But a search engine for connected object can raise question and entice fear, as it can facilitate object piracy. Do we need a privacy policy for connected object, like for personal data? It's still very early stage to know what the future holds in store. If data is the new oil, IoT and APIs are the pipes, and developers the oil companies. It's a vivid ecosystem, and a Shred search engine can be one cornerstone of it, with a view to enable connected objects to interconnect and eventually turn the Internet of Things in the Web of Things. Please welcome with me John Matherly from Shodan. Thank you.
25 billion. That's how many things could be connected to the internet in a few months. Everyday objects like watches, fridges and clothing are online, as well as cars, buildings and power plants. These smart objects can self-regulate, order the supplies they need, or be controlled at a distance. They're user-friendly, intuitive, and are communicating more and more without us paying much attention. John Matherly is fully aware of this. He's created Shodan, the first public search engine for the Internet of Things, giving anyone access to this little-known side of the web. But with Shodan, John is above all pointing to a huge flaw. Millions of smart objects are easy to access and can even escape their owner's control. It's enough to shock us into awareness and into starting to protect our digital lives today.
So as Nicolas mentioned, I'm here to talk about the Internet of Things. It's a very new term, so before I want to talk about the Internet of Things, I want to talk about the Internet. Because people have a very different impression of what the Internet is depending on where they come from. So we started with very humble beginnings with tape drives and cassettes and all these things, moved on to large data centers now. And this is to a large extent to how I imagine the internet to look like as an engineer. But most people are used to it from a more consumer level side, where it's about creating content. I grew up with GeoCities, which is ancient knowledge nowadays. But today you have Pinterest, you have WordPress, you have blogs. You have a lot of different ways of creating content. It's been a huge driver for the internet. Humans are trying to have the same sort of creative expression that they used to have offline, now on internet. Along with the content creation, you have to have tools for searching that content to make it readily accessible to everywhere in the world. Google has dominated that area, and there are some other things coming up soon, but Google has dominated. And then finally, there's a sharing aspect of the internet. It's been the most popular aspect for the past few years with Facebook, MySpace, Twitter. Everybody wants to share what they're creating. Everybody wants to be connected with the real-world people that they know and make new connections in the process. To a large degree, people know the internet as a way for facilitating human interaction, for talking to other humans, for connecting with other people, to show what you're doing in your real world through the medium of the internet. But things have been changing. More importantly, most things that you interact with are actually the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web is only a fraction of the internet. Many people, think Google is synonymous with the internet. They think that Facebook, everything that you use through your browser, through your computer, that's the internet. But that's wrong. You are only looking at a small slice of the internet filtered through the view of the search engines. Along with innovation on the internet, we've seen a huge amount of innovation in the hardware side of things. Everybody nowadays has a smartphone, tablet. Very soon you might not even need a big desktop anymore. And with the innovation in hardware, businesses have started to think how to use the same sort of benefits of connected devices and smaller scale computers to save money. So more than 10 years ago, businesses started to buy stuff like this. This is a module that essentially converts an analog system to a digital system. This is a small module you can attach to a factory, a building, a power plant, all of these big industrial systems that you spend millions and millions of dollars on. You buy this, and you buy it because it lets you connect to it from anywhere in the world. So instead of having a technician go out to every single location and push a button or update something, you install that piece, and immediately you have access to it from anywhere in the world. You can manage it from anywhere. This should be obvious why it's a huge, huge cost savings, and why business has actually been the driver of the Internet of Things. Most people think of it as, consumer level technology, but businesses have been doing this for a long time, before the term Internet of Things even came about. So this is not an overnight thing. It's been a very slow progression that's slowly surfacing in consumer level technology. This was a Kickstarter project called Lockitron. This is a device that lets you control your front door lock, or any door lock for that matter, over your iPhone. So now you can be at work, let's say a friend needs to go into your house, no problem. You look at the webcam in front of the door, and you unlock it over your iPhone. Easy. This is a bit more obscure, but just to kind of give you an idea of what's possible, this is an egg carton, a digital egg carton. So as you use eggs, it will tell your phone. Everything will be synchronized. So if you ever run low on eggs, you'll know. It'll tell you. And you can go to a grocery store, you can be like, oh, I only have 4 eggs in my refrigerator. I need to stock up on those. This is kind of where a lot of these things are going. You will have these traditional systems that you don't even think of as being, electronic, having a computer, being connected. But they will have a computer inside them. They will talk to other devices, and they will change the way you operate on a daily basis. And this is what people mean when they say Internet of Things. They mean putting a computer, hopefully with Wi-Fi or some other active wireless technology, into everyday devices. It's getting cheaper, it's getting faster, it's getting smaller. And comparing it to the previous World Wide Web, the Internet of Things is about communication between machines. It's not between humans. These devices were designed to talk to other devices. This is not meant to show up on Google. You're not going to use everyday regular technology to access these things. They're meant for other machines. So fundamentally, the Internet of Things is a different form of communication. Along with these machines generating content, the egg carton telling you how many eggs you have, this is the same way humans generate content. In the same way they generate content, you need a way to search it. And this is where Shodan comes in. I like to say that Google finds websites and Shodan finds devices. Google is very good at what it does for searching the World Wide Web, but it doesn't see anything on a machine level, not at all. This is how the website currently looks like. It's a typical search engine website, big bar up top. It's a bit more security-oriented right now, because that's where the primary drivers came in for initially. There's a developer API, and it's been mentioned in the press. It's a 4-year-old project. It's very slow progression, because Internet of Things is only a term that came about maybe the past year, really. And when you search on Shodan, you will quickly realize that it's not Google. It currently is not a technology meant for the average user. You often read about stories, if you search for Shodan, that are very alarmist. You find power plants and other things, which I'll go into later. But this is fundamentally a technical tool, and you need to have technical knowledge to find these things. If you go on Shodan, you can't just type in refrigerator and get all the refrigerators in the world. You can find them, but it will take some technical skill to do so. And in the search results here, you can tell that I provide where it's located, who owns the device, like the city, the country, sometimes the latitude and longitude. So you get a lot of information about the device itself. It's not so much about the content of the device, but about the device itself. For example, for the egg carton, I wouldn't be storing how many eggs a person has, but I would store they have an egg carton that's electronic. The egg carton is located in San Diego, and it's owned, maybe by university. That's the kind of information I would store. And the same way Google provides different ways of looking at the data, I also provide different ways. So previously you saw a text-based search, but I also provide a visual interface. This is a map-based search of the data. So this is a satellite image of, these are just regular web servers, nothing fancy. But you can do the same thing with home automation systems. So you can go around the world in a similar Google Maps style interface, and if you know what to search for, you can zoom in on different areas. You can be like, I want to find all the webcams in Paris. You can do that with Shodan. The primary customers of Shodan right now are businesses. So there are 3 main categories. There's a research category, which are universities. I have more than 100 universities that subscribe to Shodan. I provide the data for free to them. So academic or nonprofit institutions can contact me and they get free access to the website and the data. And they use it from everything to monitoring their own network to I have classes that run around Shodan. There are several PhD and master's students that use Shodan to understand about internet and network topology. Then obviously the security. This is where Shodan has made most of the news. They use it to find things that maybe shouldn't be on the internet, or they use it to keep track of what's available on the internet. And finally there's market intelligence, which is what Shodan was actually created for. Shodan was not created for the Internet of Things. I came up with the idea 10 years ago. This was before people thought all this stuff would even be online. But people nowadays do use Shodan to find out who is using what. For example, Cisco. They can see who is buying their product, where those customers are located, how those devices are configured, are they patching their devices, and you can find out about the customers or the competitors. HP can find out, where are Juniper devices located? How are their customers using it? You can gain a lot of information about your customers and your competitors' customers using Shodan. So for a business, Shodan provides a lot of value, a lot of insight, and these are real numbers. This is not a statistical, I did a sampling of 1,000 devices. I can give you the exact location and information about every device and its owner. So currently the database in Shodan includes, nearly 500 million devices. It's a decent amount, probably less than most people expected, but the maximum number of devices on the internet, as at least exposed directly to the internet, is only around 3.5–4 billion. So I'm getting there. But as I mentioned earlier, the World Wide Web, Google, Facebook, is only one slice of the internet. And if you look at that slice, the World Wide Web is comprised of approximately, this is probably in the higher end, 50 million devices. So out of the 450 million that I have in Shodan, 50 million of them include Google, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, everything that you use. Everything that you use, to a large degree, is powered by 50 million devices that are public on the internet. Now, very often, behind these devices are more devices. I'm only talking to what's directly on the internet. But what are the other 400 million devices? What are those things on the internet? And this is the chunk of information that I spend most of my time looking at. Google does a very good job of looking at the World Wide Web. I don't need to compete with Google. What I'm looking at is everything else. And there is a huge amount of data out there that nobody is looking at. And the Internet of Things is a big part of that. This is another image to kind of illustrate how I see most people's perception of the internet. Whenever I talk to people, they're used to Google, Facebook, Reddit, all these things that they use every day. And that's what they imagine, the internet is like, but it's really not. There is so much more going on. And over the next few years, people will start to realize this more. So I'll be talking about control systems. It's kind of a technical term. It's kind of business-oriented. And these are the acronyms for it, and ICS and SCADA and everything else. But what it really means are these are the computers that control the world around you. They control the lighting in this room. They control the air conditioning. They control the traffic lights. They control everything around you on a daily basis. You probably don't even realize it, that over the past decade, we've gone from analog systems to digital. It's been a silent migration. The average user will probably not even be aware of it. But it's happened, and it's made a big impact on the internet. So now I want to talk about some examples of things you see if you start searching on Shodan. And these are some highlights that have in certain ways been covered in the news. This is a building. This is actually Google's headquarters in Australia. So as you can see, you have a layout of the building, designations, you have temperature control. You have complete access to the building. And this was publicly accessible on the internet because most people do not have awareness about the internet. Again, they think that if it's not on Google, it's not on the internet. And it can happen to anybody, even Google. They hired a contractor, they didn't do their work properly, it ended up on the internet. And for all these things, by the way, the data was sent to the computer emergency response teams of the countries. It's like here Google was notified and Australia was notified. So they took the device down. So for all these things I'll be mentioning, they're not online anymore. I provide the data for free to security people so they can fix it. This is how it looks inside. It's a very nice building. It's very new. This is interesting because this is a red light camera. This is a red light camera that if you connect to it, it will provide you a video stream, a real-time video stream. You see the car is driving by, and at the same time, it will read the license plate information and look it up. So if you pull it up, you'll see on one side of the screen a video. On the left side of the screen, you'll see text with the license plate information and the owner. This is data that was not meant for humans. You don't readily find this on Google. But machines send this information out because they want other machines to use it. This is a data feed for other machines. If you know how to talk to it, though, you can also see the exact same information. Sometimes they even tell you exactly where they're located. So here I used Shodan Maps to zoom into a location of the red light camera. This specific one is located in Lafayette, Louisiana, and you can see exactly where the red light camera is located. This is useful because if you don't want it to be on the internet, which you maybe don't, you know exactly where it is. You know exactly where to go, where to fix it, what to do. So in some ways, it's nice that these devices advertise a lot of information because it also makes it easier to track down. This is an example of somewhere in, I believe, France, actually. It's a ski rail. So you can control this. This is one of these systems where the business wanted to have the ability to control the device over the internet. They thought it would be more flexible for a technician. Instead of having to drive out there and make changes himself, he can just log in remotely and work with it from there. This is a car wash, another example of things that you probably don't imagine being on the internet. You probably don't think of this as being a searchable thing. But everything around us, even the most weird and bizarre and mundane things, are starting to have computers in them. And these computers are becoming connected to a network, because everything's connected nowadays. Everybody has iPads, has mobile devices. They want to be able to connect to anything from anywhere in the world. That's just a demand that everybody has. And this is probably the biggest find that was found on Shodan to date. This is, again, a device located in France, in the region of Fumel. This is a hydroelectric dam. This is a big dam that generates power, and it was located publicly on the internet. And again, this was, authorities were notified as soon as it was found. But this is obvious. This is one of the devices you obviously do not want on the internet. There are certain things you just don't want on the internet. But they put it online because they thought it was a good idea to maintain it remotely. They didn't want to have a tech guy there on hand. And that's what happened. So as far as I know, there are a bit more than 2 million of these control systems on the internet right now. There are probably way more, so 2 million is pretty conservative. But it's still a decent amount. And sometimes people tell me, well, what's the big deal? You have a home, you can control the air conditioning system, who cares? The problem is, if you can access one house, it's probably not a big deal. But what if a whole city is online, which has happened, and you can control the air conditioning then? What if you have a hot summer, and somebody decides to turn on the air conditioning for an entire city? Once you start scaling these things, it matters. The security of a single device might not be that important, but the security of 1,000 or 100,000 or 1,000,000 devices, that becomes very important, and that becomes an issue of national security. This is not something you can ignore moving forward. Even egg cartons, even trivial things that you might not think are important right now, because who cares whether somebody knows I need 5 eggs? Who cares, right? But what happens when you can compromise or access these devices on a global scale in real time, and they're everywhere? That's a problem. So I want to talk about some other use cases besides the obvious security and sort of more scary issues. There's a lot of useful data you can get out of Shodan. So there's a German company, I believe, called Nordex, and they make wind turbines. Renewable energy, alternative energy sources, very popular. So a lot of people are buying them. What you can do with Shodan is you can find them. Very often they're connected to the internet. So you can actually learn about who is using these wind turbines, who is on the forefront of buying these products, deploying them, how many are they using. Here I have a map of them. You can see actually France is leading with 118 devices of Nordex. So that's good. And you can see a distribution. And, nothing in Eastern Europe or stuff like that, mostly Europe-centric, which is expected for a German company, I guess. But you can learn a lot about who is using these wind turbines. And once you start looking at the machine data that they actually expose, you can gain even more insight. Again, these devices were made to advertise as much as possible about themselves, so other machines can respond to it. So here they are telling you how many turbines they're using, how big is the wind farm that they deployed. In the same token, you can also look at how much power they output. So now you can correlate that. You can say, well, which countries are generating the most wind power? Which countries are lagging? Which countries might just be developing their wind infrastructure by looking at the number of turbines they have. And you can keep track of this over time. Every month, Shodan takes a complete snapshot of the internet. Everything. Every month, Shodan looks at every single device that is connected to the internet and takes a snapshot of it. So over time, you can keep track of these things and you can trend them. The data will become only more valuable over time as we can see who is doing what. Even mundane devices like printers become interesting once you start looking at them on a grand scale. And you have a printer, they're everywhere on the internet. It's You know, it's really funny. You can print on somebody else's printer and whatever, do all sorts of pranks. But you can also get information. So here I was finding out which universities need ink, need new toner. This is just a byproduct of the Internet of Things. This is information that's available. You can just go on Shodan. You can be like, give me all the universities that need to have new toner, or need to their paper replaced, or tell me how many, how often they replace it. These are just usage patterns you can determine by looking at the machine data. And everything will be like this. The egg cartons, there will be trends over time. Are you buying bigger eggs, smaller eggs? Are the eggs you're buying shrinking? Is the company trying to do something with them? I don't know. All these things will be measured. That's the important part. And all these things will be quantified, searchable, and analyzable. And the final example I want to provide for Shodan is a bit unusual. It's actually a group out of New York. They're called Citizen Lab. And what they've been doing is using Shodan to track internet censorship. They are able to identify, using Shodan, which Western companies are selling their technology to countries like Syria, Burma, and other countries that support internet censorship. They're able to track that in real time. That's obviously a problem. Here they tracked a Canadian company that sold their devices to Pakistan to censor its citizens. Sometimes it's hard to track who is doing what, but they're able to do it with Shodan. So finally, we're moving towards a world where you're not just going to be searching for digital content. We're moving towards a world where the environment itself will be connected and searchable. Everything in your house, if you go to Kickstarter, there are projects on intelligent light bulbs, intelligent door locks. Everything is becoming smart. Everything is becoming connected. So you will be able to search for those things using search engines such as Shodan. And more importantly, everything will be quantified. Everything will be measured. They'll look at your patterns. When do you open the door? When do you close the door? All these things will be measured and quantified. And actually, as Nicola mentioned, there might be privacy implications. There's a story recently where there are TVs made by, I believe, Samsung or something. And they stored which TV channels you selected, how long were you on them, when did you change the channels, and they sent all that information over the internet. You can find TVs on Shodan, and you can find that kind of information. That is obviously a huge privacy concern, and the customers weren't aware of this. So this is such a new field. People don't fully understand. This is a new era of the internet. It's changing. It's not just about the World Wide Web. The Internet of Things is coming, and it's going to change the way people should think about. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. For me, you are actually, with this story of discovering a new world of things, of connected things, you are not the Google of the Internet of Things. You are more like Christophe Colomb or Magellan. So I have many questions, and we have not so much time, but so I will try to pick out some typical questions. First range of question regards the way I can control my personal connected objects. Can we see it? How can I protect the medical data of my health connected object from being accessed by Shodan?
So people are often concerned about, is my laptop on Shodan? Is my every device on Shodan? The majority of them are not. The majority of them are behind a router, they're behind a firewall. So a lot of these things you have to put on there on purpose. Now, a lot of people still do that, but by default, a lot of these things are not directly on the internet. Actually, moving to IPv6 will change that, because with IPv6, a lot of things will be by default on the internet. So that'll be a bit different. But for IPv4, most people are safe.
So you're safe now, but be aware of the future.
Exactly. So moving forward, it's more important to be aware of these concerns and how internet connectivity affects your privacy.
Then there is a reverse kind of question is that how can I bring my connected device to the network and be accessed by Shodan? And this particular question. Okay, so Internet of Things have the search engine. Do you think they will have also a social network like a Facebook of the Internet of Things?
I don't know, because when I was making the comparison between creating content for humans and then machines generating content, Shodan is sort of the analog to Google for these machines. But I'm not sure about the sharing aspect, because it's not really, machines are already talking to each other, they're already networked. It's sort of an implicit connection between machines. And there's no really barrier between them. Machines don't care, they don't have any feelings whether, should I be connected to this person or not. So when in doubt, to connect with everything.
Some question also about censorship. And you've mentioned a use case in a country where there is censorship. Have any governments tried to contact you? Is censorship an issue with which you are confronted?
I get that question a lot, especially when I first launched. Actually, after I launched, somebody publicly posted on Twitter, Shodan will not be alive for more than 3 days. They thought Shodan would be taken down because the government would be too worried about having all this information public. It's actually been the opposite. It's actually been the opposite. Government has approached me, but they see it as a way to raise awareness for their own concerns, because they are also interested in protecting these devices. They know that the information is out there, and if you don't make it available in an easy way, bad guys will see it. People have been able to find the same information that Shodan has before Shodan came out, but they've used other ways that were illegal to do it. Shodan is the first legal way of actually collecting and aggregating all this information. And most governments are actually very appreciative, also because I provide them the data for free. So they're happy.
And I guess this is the last question. Isn't Shodan going to be obsolete if one day all devices are secured? What would be the sustainable development for Shodan then? And then maybe answering this question, you can give us a word about your current customers, like Cisco and so on, to say that you are not a startup in the cloud, but you are currently up and running with real customers.
Oh yeah, so Shodan is a fully profitable business. This is not a theoretical thing. The way Shodan makes money is actually not through the website. The website is a demonstration of the data. The way Shodan makes money is it licenses the monthly snapshot to big companies. So I have security companies, I have vendors that make these devices, and they purchase the data from me so they can do the analytics. What I was talking about with the wind turbines and the printers and all these things, that's why they buy the data. So they can look at it for themselves. They feed it into their own system or they resell it. So this is how Shodan makes money. And it's a very unrealistic view to think that the internet will be secure. I don't see it ever happening. There are too many people involved, too many things changing, too many difficulties. But even if, let's assume everything gets secure, Shodan will still be valuable because I've developed the technology to talk to these devices. This is not the same communication that you use to talk to the web. These are very specialized devices, and that's why it takes time. It's taken 4 years to really develop and flesh out all the different languages and you need to know to talk to the devices. And that technical expertise will be knowledgeable no matter what. For example, let's say you want to have an in-home search engine. You want to be, okay, where are my keys? You could search for them. It will have a computer inside of it. So these are things that will always become valuable. Search is only becoming more valuable in the future. As we have more devices, more of everything, you will need ways to filter it and to find it.
Okay, so thank you very much, John, and good luck in your
Thank you.